Thanks for tuning in to Wine Blast. Sign up to Wine Blast Plus for first-class subscriber-only content to access our full archive, support the show and get every episode before it goes on free release. You'll also get subscriber-only discounts with the likes of Corrigan, Jancis Robinson Glassware and Academy du Vin Library. Just visit wineblast.co.uk or click the link in the show notes. Hello, you're listening to Wine Blast. Whether you're new here or a regular or even a Wine Blast Plus subscriber, you are very welcome. And we are delighted to have you with us for what is a regular feature with a bit of a twist.
Yeah, don't worry, it's not jalapenos in your Sauvignon Blanc or whatever the latest TikTok fad is. No, we're doing our usual news recap, complete with the unmissable, guess the missing word in the wine headline slot. Iconic.
Love it.
Iconic. It's just us saying that. No one else says that. But we can't help it. Then we're going to sort of add on something a bit different after that, which is a report on English and Welsh wine, based partly on the WineGB Awards 2026, which we recently co-chaired, and featuring some outstanding and also some good value wine recommendations. So tasty stuff to look forward to.
An insider's guide, if you like. And by the end of this episode, you will be fully briefed, hopefully with something delicious lined up for your glass too. And on the subject of raising glasses, we wanted to start on a decidedly immodest note, didn't we? By mentioning the exciting news that Wine Blast has made the shortlist for the 67 Pall Mall Global Wine Communicator Awards for an unprecedented third year in a row.
Yeah, can we pass that off as news? I'm not sure we can, really.
Not.
So I think
it's
you're
news
right.
To us.
It was news to us. But I think really
Very
we should
nice
be
news.
just ashamed of ourselves for such blatant self-promotion.
We should.
But, you know, I almost don't see it as just us crowing. Wine Blast is very much a two-way thing. We can't do what we do without you listening and supporting. So it's more a validation, I think, for all the Wine Blast community. So thanks to you. Thanks to the judges and to 67 Pall Mall. Do check out the other nominees as well. There is a wealth of fabulous wine content on that shortlist. We'll put a link in the show notes to that.
But you were particularly thrilled, weren't you, about the fact that the episode we got nominated for involved Homer Simpson.
Childishly excited. So excited, in fact, that I kind of feel an overwhelming urge to play a clip from that show. Can I?
If you
can
must.
I do that?
If you
can
must.
I do that?
Moment of truth.
You know, our marriage really could use fewer moments of truth.
Okay, Homer, you got $1 million bottle of wine. For once in your life, don't be stupid.
I could feel you sighing internally then, rolling your eyes. I'm sorry, Simpsons humour just runs deep in me. You know it. I can't help it. And then, you know, when they do a whole Simpsons episode about wine fraud and the good folk at Disney let us feature Homer and Marge and many others, and then we get to have a fascinating chat with Maureen Downey about fake wine. You know, that's my kind of happy place.
We all have our happy places, don't we? Some different to others. So here's to fewer moments of truth in marriages. Moving on. We wanted to pick up on some proper news, but which also ties back into a recent Wine Blast episode, and that is the fact that Stalin's wine cellar has finally resurfaced in Tbilisi, Georgia, after we left it in uncertain circumstances following John Baker's excellent story about it in episodes 21 and 22.
I mean, it's almost like the Georgian authorities heard the episode, then decided to do something.
This is even more immodesty.
This amazing story. We really are going
We're
properly
going for
immodest.
it. And of course, we have covered Georgia, haven't we, a fair bit on the pod over the years, especially after you filmed there back in 2021 and visited the very archaeological site where the oldest known wine remains have been found, dating back around 8,000 years.
Yeah.
So effectively ground zero for wine.
Yeah, no, that was a magical moment. And now this stellar cellar that we had on the pod is in the news because apparently 40,000 of these unbelievably old and rare wines, reputedly once owned by both Tsar Nicholas II and Joseph Stalin, which we heard all about in the episodes with John, including the likes of Chateau d'Yquem, Margaux, Latour, Aubryon and Lafite from the 1800s, are being put up for auction by the Georgian government, with the proceeds apparently going to fund a wine education centre in Tbilisi.
But there was another nice touch that tied in with John's story, wasn't there? In that one of the VIPs invited to this PR event in the cellar itself to publicise the sale was Pierre Lurton, a Bordeaux grandee who oversees both Château d'Yquem and Cheval Blanc. Now, in our Stalin's Cellar mini-series, John told us how he'd visited Yquem and Pierre Lurton with a bottle of 1870s Yquem from this Georgian cellar to get it verified at the chateau. But he broke it in transit. I mean, it's a story that's both tragic and quite funny.
Well worth listening to if you haven't.
And Pierre had told him he was crazy, or words to that effect. But as this cellar has now resurfaced, there was Pierre Lurton grinning like a schoolboy, surrounded by ancient bottles, calling it a pantheon of wine and rhapsodising about how wine all started here in Georgia.
Yeah, and there was also a US collector invited over, wasn't there, who said it was like being Indiana Jones opening up a cave. It could be nothing. It could be something. Well, it's definitely something. John Baker can confirm that, as can Pierre Lurton. Anyway, the mystery of the current whereabouts of Stalin's cellar is resolved, it seems. And if you're interested in buying some properly old and rare wine, follow the thread, but you may need to start saving now.
And we should say a quick thank you to the listeners who alerted us to this story with impressive speed. I mean, I think Alid was first off the mark, but thanks all round. So, next up is the excellent news that wine drinkers show lower heart risk than other alcohol consumers. Now, we've covered the health debate around wine and alcohol before on the pod, most notably in our Life or Death episode from season 6. But one issue that comes up is the lack of data available on the potential differences in health impacts between different kinds of alcohol, like beer, cider and spirits, for example, versus wine.
Yeah, now finally we have something credible to go on. This was a study published in March 2026 by the American College of Cardiology based on data from more than 340,000 UK adults in the UK Biobank between 2006 and 2022. It was observational rather than a gold standard clinical trial, so not proving cause and effect, but that's pretty much a given in these large cohort alcohol studies. The study confirmed that high alcohol intake is linked to worse health outcomes, regardless of drink type. That's probably not a surprise. But when it came to moderate intake, what was perhaps more of a surprise was that wine was linked to lower mortality, while beer, cider and spirits were associated with higher mortality.
The study concluded that moderate wine drinkers had a 21% lower risk of cardiovascular death, while even low intake of other alcohol types was linked to a 9% higher risk of cardiovascular death. The study's authors noted that the data came from the general UK population, but these results could be accentuated in higher risk groups. They also noted how these results can help refine guidance, emphasising that the health risks of alcohol depend not only on the amount of alcohol consumed, but also on the type of beverage.
Yeah, are you listening, World Health Organization, rather than spouting the baffling party line that there's no safe level of alcohol to consume? As for the big why question, the study didn't answer those, with the authors suggesting the results could be down to polyphenols or antioxidants in wine or other lifestyle factors like drinking with meals and a healthier overall diet. The biobank is also a relatively wealthy cohort and the drinking was self-reported, so something else to bear in mind.
And presumably, people don't just drink exclusively wine or beer or spirits. I mean, there must be some degree of crossover. Certainly going by your intake. So perhaps a pinch of salt here, but still interesting results. As ever, we're reminded that alcohol and health is not a black and white issue, but one with infinite shades of grey, given how personal these things can be as well.
Yeah, but one other piece of research news before we move on is that if men want the Peter Pan effect, then wine is the answer. I'm paraphrasing with considerable artistic license. And when I say Peter Pan, I mean staying young. This is the March 2026 study whose title is Moderate Wine Consumption, defined by the Mediterranean diet, is associated with delayed biological aging in men, published in the International Journal of Public Health. And it is good news for men, isn't it?
Sadly, less so for women. But yes, the study's results indicated that moderate wine consumption may contribute to slower biological ageing in men. And by moderate, they mean around 200 mils of wine per day, about a quarter of a bottle. Interestingly, as per the previous study, this wasn't the same for overall alcohol or ethanol intake, where results were neutral or worse. It seems specifically linked to wine, with a J-shaped curve in evidence, but for men, not for women, where the benefits were pretty much non-existent, with potential reasons being variations in metabolism and hormones, or women's naturally lower levels of alcohol dehydrogenase.
Yeah, but other things keep you young, like a younger man in a relationship, possibly. But it's an interesting one, isn't it? The notion that any amount of alcohol is likely to be bad for you or take a toll on the body isn't necessarily true. So all those wellness gurus aspiring for eternal youth, maybe check out these results and live a little while you're at it.
On which note, we should just briefly touch on that hilarious recent Stephen Bartlett furore, where the noted entrepreneur, podcaster and all-round wellness optimizer said on his podcast that he'd had a few glasses of wine and it had ruined 3 days of his life. And by that we mean not eating and sleeping well, podcasting worse, not going to the gym, all of which he was tracking, of course he was, on his smartwatch.
Oh, catastrophic. But the main thing was the reaction this caused. Dismayingly, some people kind of nodded along. But refreshingly, lots of people found this faintly absurd, maybe not even faintly, basically taking the piss out of Bartlett for focusing relentlessly on self-optimization and biohacking and wellness rather than just actually living life well. Radio 1 presenter Greg James took to social media to urge his followers to join his anti-optimization / Bartlett cult today, and saying optimization is killing fun.
I mean, ultimately, Bartlett is a teetotaler who's quite good at provoking debate. So perhaps we should all take a breath before waging in.
I think this incident he's referring to was like a while back in the past, wasn't it? Before he went
but it was heartening to see a kind of backlash against this slightly insidious and troubling mania for self-optimization, maybe taking life a bit too seriously and literally and monitoring everything way too much.
Problematic. What's also reassuring or perhaps interesting in challenging assumptions, I guess, is the very recent news that Gen Z are now drinking the same as the normal population. I mean, the received notion has been that Gen Z has been shunning alcohol for wellness and other reasons. But new IWSR research indicates that Gen Z are now actually drinking at similar rates to the normal population. They might have a slightly different relationship to alcohol than previous generations. They tend to drink more in larger social groups, drink more cocktails, more likely to follow official health guidance, but certainly not turning their backs on alcohol as some have been suggesting.
So not all slavishly following Stephen Bartlett then. Good for them.
Not,
And by Gen Z, by the way, we mean 14 to 29-year-olds, or those born between 1997 and 2012. And of course, we're only talking about those old enough to drink alcohol. What's more concerning, I think, in terms of trends is the news that GLP-1 weight loss drugs like Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro have led to a £136 million drop in grocery spend. So according to CAM, something like 4 to 7% of UK adults are using these medications. That's 2.1 to 3.7 million people. The number of users has doubled year on year. What the drugs do is reduce appetite, and 23% of GLP-1 users say they drink less alcohol when they go out. It's a similar picture in America, where 18% of adults say they've taken GLP-1 medicines at some point.
Yeah, data from YouGov Health reports that 39% of Britons taking weight loss drugs say they drink less alcohol since starting treatment. This is impacting hospitality and retail, and the impact seems likely to grow over time too, especially if the drugs are starting to come in pills now rather than jabs, which is tough news, more tough news, not just for the struggling hospitality sector, but also for wine producers, of course.
And all this ties into the latest OIV stats from May 2026, which indicate ever-reducing global wine consumption, a shrinking global vineyard, and production in decline. Signs, the OIV says, and I quote, of a global wine sector reacting to the real-time impacts of trade policies while also adapting to longer-term changes in terms of climate and consumption. They highlighted global trade value as holding up and said the sector was resilient, but these are clearly testing times and things like US tariffs particularly unhelpful.
Yeah. Global vineyards shrinking for the 6th consecutive year by 0.8% to 7 million hectares. It's been a 25-year decline in real terms in the vineyard. World wine consumption down 2.7% at 227 million hectolitres, another 60-year low. Wine production was up 0.6% over the previous year, but that previous year was another historic low. So we're talking about a new reality here, I think, with production down almost a quarter from highs in 2004, 2013 and 2018. So it does seem to be a time of transition to, who knows what new reality. Let's just hope it's not the world of Stephen Bartlett and his
I
ilk.
don't think it's that bleak, is it?
No, I hope not.
Okay, so perhaps a quick dip into history will cheer us up.
Yeah, come on.
First, the news that medieval grape seeds found in an old toilet reveal Pinot Noir's 600-year heritage. Hope the archaeologists washed their hands after that find. This is a study published in Nature Communications, identifying a 600-year-old grapeseed found in the toilet of a medieval hospital in France as genetically identical to modern Pinot Noir. So when you drink Pinot, you are drinking history in more ways than one.
Yeah, I mean, the researchers couldn't say whether the grapes were made into wine or eaten like table grapes, but, they suggested that Joan of Arc, who lived around 600 years ago, could have consumed the same grapes as us, The study also confirmed that growers had already adopted clonal propagation techniques like today. It also goes to show, I guess, how popular Pinot Noir has proved over time. So if you're a Pinot fan, you're one in a long line.
Now, another study looking at grapeseed DNA, this time in Italy, has revealed that Chianti was once a white wine region, and that these white grapes were curated and maintained for centuries by the Etruscans and Romans before the region became famous for its reds as it is today. So making a similar point to the Pinot Noir study. But these grape seeds were 2,000 years old, found in ancient wells on the Badia a Coltibuono estate in Chianti.
Talking of Pinot Noir and finishing off our serious news recap, we must pay tribute to Sam Neill, celebrated actor, wonderful human being and outstanding wine producer. It was a real gut punch hearing the shocking news that Sam had died. Not least because we'd had him on the podcast very recently, talking about him winning the Top Red Wine Award in our New Zealand Wines of the Year and discussing wine and life in general. The world has lost a shining star, not just for his screen and wine work, but also because of the nature of the man, humble, witty, attentive, generous, naughty, just wonderful company. It's been very telling to witness the outpouring of grief from so many quarters at the news of his death.
Hasn't it just? Yeah. I mean, I think you made the point about him being a thoroughly decent man, a quality that seems to be somewhat underrated these days. And most people outside of wine, of course, think of him just as a well-known actor, from Jurassic Park or Hunt for Red October or Peaky Blinders or whatever. But he was so much more than that. Environmental activist, tender of fruit trees, and keeper of a wonderful menagerie of animals named after co-stars, like Meryl Streep the pig, Helena Bonham Carter the cow, Michael Fassbender the rooster, and Jason Momoa and Jenna Ortega the ducklings. And of course, he was a fabulous wine producer. He'd had blood cancer, but was in remission after successful treatment. And then it seems he caught pneumonia and just deteriorated very quickly. Such a loss,
But Sam's Central Otago winery, 2 paddocks, will continue. A fine legacy, if ever there was one. One former co-star, Lindsay Duncan, described Sam as a gorgeous man and wonderful actor, adding, he made wine and he shared it. What more do you want? And if Sam loved anything, it was a good laugh. So he wouldn't want us to mope. And in that spirit, let's boost morale with our Guess the Missing Word in the Wine headline, tomfoolery.
Okay.
And I'll start. I'm going to go first.
Go on.
Online searches for what through the roof?
Anti-self-optimization courses.
I hope so.
News headlines that don't involve Donald Trump.
Yeah.
I don't know. What?
Okay, so it's online searches for chilled reds and Sancerre.
Oh.
Through the roof. So this was a Summergeist report by Google that reported that searches for chilled red were up 20%. And of course, we touched on this in our recent Paydoc episode, didn't we?
Yeah.
Where clearly wine producers have identified this as a style with tremendous potential. We are going to have to do a programme on it soon,
I'd love to do a programme on that.
It's a really hot topic.
Yeah.
Now, also, Sancerre searches were up 5,000%. I'm not sure that's you can't say 5,000%, can you? But anyway, you get that was what was quoted in the article, so I'm going with that. Anyway, because a bottle of the stuff featured in a Taylor Swift documentary. There you go, the pop straw. Other trending searches included Beaujolais, good, Aperol and Hugo Spritz, fibre maxing, black sesame, frozen yogurt, and Spam hot dogs.
So many questions, but moving on. So
we could get caught in that. Thicket.
I'm not even going to go there. What about? Here's one for you.
Okay.
So, the surprising bloom in what? And just a clue, it's for 5 p.m. in the sun.
Very, very dry sherry. Am I showing my age there?
In a cardigan.
Surprising bloom almost seems like toxic algae or something like that. What else? 5 p.m. in the sun. Naked yoga, obs.
5 p.m. in the sunlight. That's the best thing you can think of doing. Naked yoga.
It's what's come to me right now.
Interesting. Well, it's not the right answer. It is the surprising bloom in Bruges. So let me explain this new trend. It's a new trend in the seemingly constant modern search for novelty. Wines that are literally a mixture of white, blanc, and red rouge, hence bluge, which actually sounds to me more like makeup. But hey, who am I? The idea is for a refreshing, down-to-earth style, which seems to be coming out of France and Spain mainly, and it may just be a new name for an old product, but it's apparently becoming a thing. So one to watch out for in your local natural wine bar.
Yeah, I mean, I actually had one recently when I was in the south of France.
Did you?
I did.
Tell me
it was
about
slightly
your
off-grid.
bluge?
It's slightly off-grid. It was a downtime moment. Anyway, it was pretty tasty.
Yeah.
It was made by a good winemaker. Though, to be honest, when I was drinking it, I was thinking, I'd probably rather have a characterful rosé.
But it's just literally mixing like a bottle of red and a bottle of white. And
well, no. I mean, it's made. Well, it's like white and red grapes can be put together, or actually you can just drain juice off one and put it to the other. It's it is a mix of the wines.
Yes,
in effect.
Yeah.
But before it's bottled, so it's bottled as a blues, if you like.
Yeah.
But I would rather have a light red or a proper rosé, because of course, to make the difference clear, a rosé would typically be made from just red grapes with a shorter skin contact.
Yeah.
Anyway, you can't stand in the way of progress in life, even if you don't understand it, as we maybe clearly don't there. And we're not going to stand in the way of progress of this programme as well. So next headline, first 5,000 bottles produced from what?
It's not that much, so it's got to be a small operation. Elon Musk's new vineyard on Mars, perhaps?
It's actually almost diametrically the opposite. It's the first 5,000 bottles produced from the Pope's vineyard.
You're right, that's very different, yes.
So we covered this a while back, if you remember. The previous Pope planted 2 hectares of Cabernet Sauvignon at the summer residence in Castel Gandolfo in Lazio. The previous Pope Francis, who died in 2025, I think, was a wine lover, noted wine lover, who said you can't party without wine, and praised the joy that wine can bring, which we covered in the podcast. Now, the current Pope Leo seems to be similarly minded, good man. He formally opened Borgo Laudato Si and blessed the site, raising a glass of red in honour of the occasion. The vines are farmed organically and tended by refugee migrant workers, and the wine is apparently available within the Vatican, as well as for visitors to the winery. So I think maybe we need a trip.
No, I think we do. Let's get it on the list. Wine needs all the champions it can get right now.
Yeah, yes.
Right,
yes.
So next up, air hostess serves what?
Underarm. Serves an ace. Sorry, I've got tennis on the mind. How about air hostess actually serves decent wine for once?
Oh, that would be a thing, wouldn't it?
Or what about a air hostess serves a writ for job title discrimination? Because you're not allowed to say air hostess anymore, right?
I'm sure you're not actually. Anyway, this was air hostess. Air hostess serves fake fizz. So this was a story from a traveller on an American Airlines flight where they ran out of sparkling wine.
Criminal.
Shock horror. So the flight attendant got creative, mixed Chardonnay with sparkling water, and then told the passenger this was airline policy. Apparently, American gets a lot of flack on the wine front, which is not surprising if that's the kind of policy they have. Though I have to say, part of me admires the creativity. I mean, if you had to fake fizz at 20,000 feet or whatever, how would you do it?
I don't know. I'm just sort of thinking it through, probably with a soda stream, but you wouldn't have those on board, would you?
No,
you wouldn't just have
I
one
don't think so.
to rely on. So, I think I'd probably recommend another kind of wine or beverage, to be honest. But not one that might feature in the next headline, which is Golf Sinkhole reveals what?
Golf sinkhole.
Golf sinkhole.
Donald Trump's secret bunker of Buckfast.
I wish that were a thing.
I'm sure it's his kind of drink, isn't it?
Well, he doesn't drink, does he? If he were to drink, maybe it would be. Those Scottish connections too. Yeah, possibly. This is Golf Sinkhole reveals century-old wine cellar.
Really?
So this was at the Davy Holme Park Golf Club in Manchester, where a sinkhole collapsed underneath the 13th hole. It would be the 13th hole, wouldn't it? And probably the cellar apparently dated back to the original manor house, and it revealed historic bottles of wine and port. They're all sadly empty, it seemed from the photos. So I'm not quite sure what's happening there. And of course, there is a strong connection between golf and wine.
Mm-hmm.
So many things to mention, but of course the Claret Jug is the Open Championship trophy, and Rory McIlroy's Masters Champion dinner was in the news recently. That was in 2026. It was pretty punchy for the wines he served.
Really?
So respect to Rory here. Salon, Domaine Le Fleuve Bâtard Montrachet 22, Lafite 1990, and Ikem 1989. So I think it's fair to say that golfers appreciate a good drop, don't they?
Oh, if only we could find those wines in a golf sinkhole.
I know, that'd be good.
But a suitably refined note to end our news recap on. So time for a quick pause before we dive into English and Welsh wine. By way of recap so far, Stalin's Cellar has come to light. Wine drinkers show lower mortality risk than other booze drinkers. Gen Z is now drinking the same as the normal population, and we're all still wondering how to make fake fizz properly. Short of any bright ideas, why don't we talk about the real stuff instead as we turn our attention to GB wine?
Right. So we are fresh from the WineGB 2026 Awards, and we thought it would be timely to have a snapshot of English and Welsh wine, because we do get asked about it quite a bit.
We do.
Plus a few of our personal top tips from the judging, including some of the better value wines, because tasting 380 odd English and Welsh wines blind is a real privilege, and it gives you an amazing insight into what's exciting and interesting right now, and perhaps a glimpse of what's to come as well.
Absolutely. So let's have a little recap first on the overview of the English and Welsh wine scene. There are around 4,840 hectares of vines in the UK. Now that is up from 793 hectares in 2005. So the national vineyard has grown sixfold in 20 years, which is pretty impressive.
It is impressive. I mean, it's still tiny. It's still
it's
tiny.
Still tiny, vineyard, but
but it's grown a lot.
Absolutely, not all of those vines are producing yet, but it has grown a lot, and they will obviously. By far, the two most planted grape varieties are Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, which account for 60% of the planted area.
Good grapes.
Kent and Sussex have the most plantings, but Essex is now third, ahead of Hampshire and Surrey. And incidentally, Wales has just over 90 hectares.
So a relatively small share for Wales. Just like the vineyard, production has been ramping up lately. It used to be that around 10 million bottles was a rough average production for modern GB wine. No longer. The record-breaking 2023 vintage saw 21.6 million bottles produced, while the very warm, dry 2025 yielded 16.5 million, with the earliest start to vintage ever. And it's looking like 2026 might be another bumper harvest. Sparkling is, of course, the UK's strong suit, accounting for 70% of production. But with warmer weather and expansion into areas like Essex, still wines are becoming an ever more significant part of the picture.
Yeah, we certainly saw that in the WineGB Awards, where more still wines than ever were submitted.
We saw a lot of those,
not just the usual Chardonnays, which is definitely England's strongest still suit for now.
Yeah.
But also other whites like Bacchus, Pinot Gris, Pinot Blanc, even things like Sauvignon Blanc, Albarino and Riesling.
Yeah.
Apparently there are now 99 grape varieties planted in the UK, including things like Gamay, Chenin Blanc, Marsanne, Savagnin, I love Savagnin, Pinotage and Nebbiolo, which is quite astonishing.
I mean, 99.
99.
I'm really surprised by that.
Me too.
I know.
That's a lot of grapes.
It's a
isn't
lot
it?
of grapes. You know, it's good to see people trying things,
Yeah.
I think. And you mentioned Gamay, didn't you? I think
Gamay,
that sounds good.
I think it's a good shout, Gamay.
I'm not so sure about some of the others, particularly things like Nebbiolo. That's ambitious. But there you go. Now, it's not all plain sailing for GB wine. And one cloud on the horizon is potential oversupply, especially given, as I said, the bountiful recent harvest and the ever-expanding vineyard, in conjunction, of course, with what we've also covered, which is stalling consumption. Now, I think that's more of a risk for still wine than it is for fizz, which can be held back without too many issues. It may also help with the second issue, of course, which is the elephant in the room, which is price.
Yeah, I mean, cost is the big pushback when it comes to English and Welsh wines.
Isn't it?
We've been over this ground before on the pod, but there's no way round it. These aren't cheap wines. And yet I suppose the fairest way to evaluate that is by comparing these wines to their competitive set. They're not competing with cheap Italian whites or I don't know, bargain Chilean reds. You know, the sparklings tend to compete with champagne or top traditional method global fizz, and the whites and Pinot Noirs with things like Burgundy. And in that context, we'd argue the better wines really do offer value for money and plenty of bang for your buck.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, no wine scene is without its challenges right now. And you could point to climate change actually helping UK wine, where it's raising questions about the very viability of other wine regions around the world, which is perhaps partly why we're seeing foreign investment continue to come into the English wine scene. We've now got, Tassinger and Pommery from Champagne. We've got Jackson Family Vineyards from the US. The Jordans from South Africa, Henkel Freycinet from Germany, the Symingtons, of course, now from Portugal, not to mention Durocher from Burgundy.
Yeah, and so essentially what we're seeing at the moment is a wine scene that's growing, not just in size and shape, perhaps, but also in confidence and momentum.
Yeah.
English and Welsh wine has gone from being a novelty made by hobbyists to a desirable mainstream product that comes in an increasing range of styles, from Chardonnay that can compete with Burgundy to characterful sparkling that can go toe-to-toe with top grower champagne.
And what's great to see is people not afraid to experiment and challenge expectations and make things fun. So in the WineGB Awards this year, we had orange wines plenty. We had hybrid reds, we had Gamay Rosé, we had Pet Nat and Col Fondo Fizz, even a funky white blend that was described by one judge in the following terms: as divisive as it is divine. We'll come on to that, won't we? But I think it all shows a wine scene flying high, keen to try its hand at everything it can. And I think also wine drinkers embracing that.
Yeah, I really do think we're entering a new era for English and Welsh wines. I mean, post-COVID, things have changed. It's really stepped up a gear, and it's not just about the shiny new things like new wave experimental still wines or places like Essex and the Crouch Valley. Just as important to my mind has been the steady improvement in the quality and refinement of the sparkling wines. I mean, just take the non-vintage or multi-vintage category. 20 years ago, these were virtually non-existent because producers hadn't had time to build up reserve stocks from previous years because they needed to sell production to generate returns on usually hefty investments. But now the industry has matured and producers have kept stocks back. And that means that you can start then blending your latest harvest with mature wines. And that can make for seriously complex, refined fizz, which we are definitely starting to see now.
Yeah, I mean, the non-vintage, multi-vintage category was probably the strongest suit at this year's WineGB Awards, would you say?
Yeah, I would say so, yeah.
I think that was really exciting. So coming back to our idea about the tips and recommendations, should we start there in terms of our recap on
tips
trends, as it were?
So why not? So the Langham Corallian non-vintage from Dorset was our supreme champion at the WineGB Awards this year, so the top wine. We tasted it again and again against a whole range of other sparklings at the awards, and it's just sensational. We'd argue this is an excellent case of not cheap, but great value. I mean, it's £32 at the Wine Society, and it can knock spots off wines twice or three times its price.
Yeah, I mean, Langham do a great job. We'd also recommend their non-vintage rosé and Blanc de Blanc in the same breath. They deliver kind of real artisanal character as well as finesse in their wines, which is a rare feat. Winemaker Tommy Grimshaw couldn't be at the awards to pick up the various accolades, including Supreme Champion, but his colleagues had him live on a phone. We were witnessing all of this on stage, and apparently it transpired Tommy got so excited at getting these awards, he did himself an injury. And he sent a picture through. Blood was involved, is all I can say. I hope it hasn't escalated beyond that. I think Tommy he's actually okay.
I think he's
fine. Good drama.
Yeah.
Good
There's
drama.
always a story with Langham. But you know, let's move on to other non-vintage and multi-vintage blends we'd recommend. They would be Domaine Hugo. Gorgeous, Candover Brook, and the Digby Brut, which all did really well. So moving on to a different category, Blanc de Blanc. Now this category has been strong for a while. Chardonnay having found a firm home in these aisles. There's an old school style, which is really tangy and orchard fruited in character, and which can age forever, and then the softer, more poised, restrained style that's become a bit more common over time. So the Woodchester Valley Blanc de Blanc 2019 from the Cotswolds won the overall trophy, but two others we'd pick up on are the Harrow and Hope Blanc de Blanc 2020, a more modern style, very good at £38, and then the Exton Park Blanc de Blanc 2013, more of an old school style and a bit more of a special bottle at £65. But given the age and maturity and complexity, it is seriously impressive.
Yeah. Now, two other categories that I think have come on a lot recently, but perhaps slightly under the radar, are Blanc de Noir and Rosé sparklings. Just little tweaks and experience and attention to detail, meaning more refined and kind of cogent wines. So the Fenny Castle Blanc de Noir 2021 from Somerset won a trophy, and it's great value at £37 or so, as is the Harrow and Hope Blanc de Noir 2020 from the Chilterns at £36. And then there were quite a few sparkling rosés we rated too, weren't there?
There were indeed, yes. So the Oastbrook Sparkling Rosé 2018 won the trophy. That's £38. But then the Langham, the Digby Leander Pink, the Grange Pink, they were all really good. And also the Treviban Mill, we need to mention, Pinot Noir Sparkling Rosé from Cornwall, which was also fun, wasn't it? So a good range of options there.
And then just to finish off on the fizz, one other style I'd single out is Pet Nat or Col Fondo. There were some really tasty, pretty decent value wines in this style, which is essentially an old school method whereby the wine just finishes fermentation in bottle, generating the bubbles, and gives quite a sort of dry, straightforward style. The Westwell Petulant Nature, great title, that great name, isn't it? Was a great example, maybe in a slightly creamier, sort of richer style, but really fun and rewarding at £28, so a little bit cheaper than some other fizz. And I actually found these wines work much better than the Charmat or Tank Method styles, which, I don't know, don't tend to have the grace or elegance or clarity of, you know, for example, good Prosecco. And I do wonder if people are making them just to undercut the traditional method styles on price.
I mean, I think I like the Charmats more than you.
Yeah, I think so. I may be being a bit uncharitable, but...
Yeah, I mean, I think some did have character, even if it's different from Prosecco. But I do agree, they struggle to compete on price. So I'm not quite sure where this category is really heading. Anyway, that's the fizz. And we haven't mentioned everything, but we'll put a full listing of our personal favourites on our website. So let's move on to this increasingly exciting category of still wines. And I think we should start with Chardonnay.
Yeah, it's our strongest suit in the stills by some distance, in terms of quality, diversity and potential. We, of course, saw the Danbury Ridge Octagon Block 2023 come third in the greatest Chardonnay showdown at the London Wine Fair, as featured in our episode of that name, which gives some sort of perspective on the levels of quality and potential we're talking about, doesn't it? And along with the non-vintage, multi-vintage fizz, I think this was definitely one of the more exciting categories to judge. Would you agree?
100%.
Yeah,
definitely.
I mean, so many different styles, but all kind of majoring on refreshing, moorish fruit character and with savoury dimensions.
So our top still wine this year was the Black Book Pygmalion Chardonnay 2023. Absolutely stunning. It's nutty, it's tangy, it's edgy. It's just bravura wine sourced from Essex but made with minimal intervention under a railway arch in London. It's about £40, I think. The Black Book Painter of Light 2020 Chardonnay is also exceptional and a bit less pricey at around £30.
Yeah, now we've had Sergio on the podcast before, haven't we?
We have.
And they do a really good job.
He's
And then
great.
a couple of other Chardonnays we'd also mention would be the Westwell Village Chardonnay at £19.50, the Whiston Tank 5 Chardonnay multi-vintage at £27.
That's quite new, isn't it? I like that.
Yeah, and the Flint Silex 2023, which is £27. The latter also has a bit of Pinot Blanc in there. So, there's lots that we could recommend, but these are definitely the better value ones, I think.
Yeah, and in terms of other whites, we've recommended English Sauvignon Blanc on the pod before, and we'd flag up the Balfour 1503 Sauvignon Blanc 2024 as worth a punt. Yeah. That one's more about palate presence than aromatic fireworks, but still with a crunchy, tangy edge. And I think that's the mark for English Sauvignon. I mean, think Touraine Sauvignon Blanc or even Côte de Gascogne, a bit more fruit forward and less mineral than Sancerre or Prix-Fumé.
I don't know, actually. I mean, I think, we're talking about where English Sauvignon could or should go. I think they should aim high. I think they should aim for the kind of Sancerre benchmark.
Maybe both are possible.
Yeah, both are possible, of course, and it would depend on the price and whatever. But I don't think we couldn't do that.
No, fair enough.
That sort of,
do it.
if you can make a sort of understated mineral, complex, foodie style with good acidity, maybe even with a bit of oak or skins in there, to mix things up. I think it could be a really interesting little niche to develop.
Yeah, maybe. It would be interesting to sort of see where it goes.
Yeah.
It's clearly here now, with a fair few people starting to make it. But moving on from Sauvignon Blanc. Bacchus has been touted as England's answer to Sauvignon Blanc in the past. And Balfour's Liberties Bacchus 2025, which won a trophy, is classic, fresh elderflower, citrus, tangy, and that's £29 at Tesco.
Yeah, and veering away from the WineGB Awards for a second, but sticking with the theme, we'd also tip the Newhall Bacchus Fumé from Essex, aged in oak. It's £23 if you like that kind of style. Orange wine is also clearly growing in popularity in the UK, and a couple to cite here would be the Vagabond Selena No. 4, a multi-vintage orange wine made from Ortega using a Cellar system that uses some floor. Absolutely stunning at about £35. And then the Wynyard Rocks Skin Contact Orange Solaris 2024 is £25, and I tasted that at a recent Welsh tasting.
Now, coming back to the WineGB Awards recommendations, we'd also throw in the Mousehall Tidebrook Medieval Monk Pinot Gris 2023, which is £29. Now, this is the project run by Gary and Kathy Jordan from South Africa, also making excellent Chardonnay. And by way of general comment, we had some very decent Pinot Gris and Pinot Blancs in the awards this year. Definitely a nice point of diversity in the mix.
Yeah, well worth looking out for, I think. Onto the rosé. Well, we all love a bit of rosé, don't we?
Of course we do.
Makes us happy.
Been drinking quite a lot in the last sort of week or two, haven't we?
Yeah. Our trophy winner in the rosés was the seriously characterful, cool Campari and orange rind stylings of the Walgate Pinot Meunier Rosé 2023, which is £34. Great to see rosé in the dark bottle. Very cool packaging all round from Walgate. And we did, of course, have Ben on the pod very recently talking natural and a natural adjacent wine, didn't we?
Yeah. Now, another rosé I'd highlight is the Cobham House Gamay Rosé 2025, £38. Good to see this variety, as we've said, shining in the UK. A bit more of a subtle, dry Provençal style, that one. Unfortunately, not in a dark bottle. But then two value shouts would be the Chapeldown English Rose 2025, which is about £13, and the Lily Farm Sunset Pink Rosé 2023, which is £13.95. Not great packaging for the latter, but great value. Finally, I can't move on without mentioning another wine we tried outside the WineGB Awards, which was the Heretics The Disobedient Pale Rosé 2023, £32 from Essex and in a dark bottle and gorgeous.
Yeah, so that Heretics Rosé is made from Pinot Noir, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which brings us neatly onto the reds. I think as an overview, Is it fair to say the reds didn't shine this year?
Perhaps not quite as much as they have in the past.
Yeah, maybe other categories are steaming ahead faster.
Maybe that's it, yeah.
And the reds are taking their time, don't know.
Yeah.
But there were some highlights, weren't there? I mean, including Pinot Noir Precoce, which is an earlier ripening version of Pinot Noir, of course, which often makes wines that are a bit more upfront and easygoing in style. And a really good one from the awards was the Flint Vineyard Pinot Noir Precoce 2024, which is £25.
Yeah, and a couple of Pinot Precoces we'd also mentioned from outside the awards are the Two Beacons Pinot Precoce 2023, £24, and the White Castle Pinot Precoce 2023 from Wales, £37, which you tasted, didn't you?
Yeah.
And then in terms of Pinot Noir proper, our trophy winner from the awards was the Simpsons Rabbit Hole Pinot Noir 2024, and that's about £25-26. And a final red shout that I liked was the Biddenden Gamay Noir 2025, back to Gamay, and that's about £22.50.
You on Gamay again. Wonderful
I think it's
stuff.
got great potential.
Yeah, it does actually. Some, I think, ideal candidates for chillable summer drinking there.
Absolutely.
Very zeitgeisty, as we covered in our news recap. And then I can't help but finish off with something we've also mentioned, this absolutely insane wine.
I know what
the
you're
Sandridge Barton Sunny, a non-vintage, floor-aged blend of Pinot Blanc and Madange from Devon. That's absolutely wild. Only to be drunk in small doses. It's high-toned and nostril-stinging, but also tangy and incredibly vibrant and nutty and savoury. Yeah, it's a bit mad. After the first edition, which was the 2022 vintage, it's now been topped up with 2024 juice, including Madeleine Angevine. So the aim is for a sort of perpetual reserve.
And there's some Pinot Gris as well, isn't there?
I think there's bits and bobs in there, shades of sort of sherry, Devon style, if you like. You were not a big fan, were you? But we other judges kind of brought you round.
Slightly. I mean, I love the guys at Sandridge Barton, but this is, this is not really my cup of tea. But it is, I agree, it's an astonishing wine. I'll give you that. And nice to see British producers doing something eclectic, funky, risky. Love all that. So I think that's a good note to end on. English and Welsh wine is evolving before our eyes, and it is intriguing.
Yeah, it's also delicious. And what I think is great is that it's evolving both in the classical realms, if you like, the refined fizz end of the spectrum, that sort of thing, but also in the more adventurous, sort of swashbuckling arena of funky still wines. You can't put GB wine in a neat little box anymore.
So you can find a full listing of our recommendations on our website show notes. Just click the link that goes with this episode. And I think that's us done, isn't it? I hope you consider yourself fully briefed, or if not, at least mildly more informed with a bit of a thirst.
Yeah, that'll do us. Please leave us a nice review and rating if you've been enjoying the show. And of course, do check out Wine Blast Plus to get much more from the Wine Blast experience. Thank you for listening. And until next time, cheers.